In a quiet university town in the Midwest, nestled between cornfields and old brick buildings, there was a small college known for its strong math department. The classrooms were often filled with students scribbling notes, trying to keep up with their professors' lectures. Among these professors was Harold Grant, a man who prided himself on his knowledge of calculus and his ability to challenge even the brightest minds. But Harold wasn't just known for being smart. He was also infamous for his sharp tongue and lack of patience when it came to anyone he deemed less intelligent than him. On one particular afternoon, Harold stood at the front of his advanced calculus class, pacing back and forth as he explained a complicated problem involving integrals. His voice echoed through the room, and his gestures were dramatic, as if every equation he wrote on the board held the secrets of the universe. Most of his students sat quietly, nodding along or furiously writing down everything he said. Some looked confused but too intimidated to ask questions. It was just another day in Harold's classroom, or so everyone thought. Unbeknownst to Harold, someone else had entered the scene. Clara Dawson, a middle-aged woman who worked as a janitor at the university, had been mopping the hallway outside the classroom. She paused near the open door when she heard Harold's voice. The sound of chalk scratching against the board and the mention of terms like derivatives and functions caught her attention. Clara leaned slightly toward the doorway, curious about what was being discussed inside. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but something about the rhythm of the lecture pulled her in. Clara wasn't your typical janitor. While most people assumed, she spent her days cleaning floors and emptying trash cans without much thought beyond her tasks. The truth was far more complex. Clara had once been deeply passionate about mathematics. In fact, during her younger years, she excelled in the subject, earning top grades and winning awards that placed her among the best in her school district. Her teachers often praised her natural talent, and many believed she would go on to achieve great things in the field of math. However, life had other plans for Clara. Financial struggles, family responsibilities, and unforeseen circumstances forced her to leave college before completing her degree. Over time, she found herself working odd jobs to survive, eventually landing a position as a janitor at the very university where she used to dream of teaching. Despite the years that had passed since her academic pursuits, Clara never lost her love for math. During her breaks at work, she would sneak into the library to read textbooks or solve problems in notebooks she kept hidden in her locker. Math was her escape, a way to reconnect with the part of herself she felt she'd left behind. So when she overheard Harold explaining a particularly tricky concept, she couldn't help but listen closely. To her, it was like hearing fragments of a song she hadn't heard in years but still remembered by heart. Inside the classroom, Harold continued his lecture, oblivious to the fact that someone outside was paying close attention. He turned to face the board, finishing up an example problem before turning back to his students. "Does anyone have any questions?" he asked, scanning the room. When no one responded, he smirked. "Well, I suppose that means you all understand perfectly. Though honestly, I doubt even a janitor could grasp this material." The comment was meant as a joke, a light-hearted jab to break the tension in the room. A few students chuckled nervously, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They weren't sure whether to laugh or stay silent. What they didn't realize, however, was that Clara was standing just a few feet away, having heard every word. For a moment she froze, feeling a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a tinge of amusement. She knew Harold hadn't intended to offend her personally, but his words stung nonetheless. How could someone judge her abilities based solely on her job? Clara considered walking away, pretending she hadn't heard anything. After all, confrontation wasn't her style. She preferred to avoid conflict whenever possible. But then again, she couldn't deny the frustration bubbling inside her. Here was a man who claimed to value intellect and hard work, yet he dismissed her simply because of what she did for a living. It wasn't fair. And deep down, Clara wanted to prove him wrong, not out of spite, but because she believed in fairness and respect. Taking a deep breath, Clara stepped into the classroom. All eyes turned to her, including Harold's. At first he seemed surprised to see her standing there holding a mop in one hand and a bucket in the other. Then his expression shifted to mild annoyance. "Can I help you?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Clara hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to proceed. But then she glanced at the board where Harold's latest equation was still visible. Without saying a word, she walked over to the desk nearest the front of the room and picked up a piece of scrap paper. Using a pen borrowed from a nearby student, she began jotting something down. Her movements were quick and confident, betraying none of the nervousness she felt inside. Harold watched her curiously, though his expression remained skeptical. "What exactly are you doing?" he asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Instead of answering verbally, Clara finished writing and handed the paper to him. On it was a solution to the problem Harold had just presented to the class. But not just any solution. Clara's approach was simpler, more efficient, and arguably more elegant than the method Harold had taught. For a moment, silence filled the room as Harold stared at the paper, his brow furrowed in disbelief. Then he looked up at Clara, his mouth opening and closing as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. The students, sensing the gravity of the situation, exchanged glances. Some whispered to each other, while others simply gawked at Clara in awe. No one had expected this turn of events, not Harold, not the students, and certainly not Clara herself. Yet here they were, witnessing a moment that would soon become the talk of the entire university. For Clara, it was both empowering and bittersweet. Part of her wished she didn't have to prove herself in such a public manner, but another part felt a sense of vindication. She had spent years hiding her talents, afraid of judgment or rejection. Now, standing in that classroom, she realized she didn't need to hide anymore. Her intelligence was valid, regardless of what anyone thought. As Harold finally broke the silence, stammering an apology and asking Clara to explain her reasoning, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this moment could be the start of something new, not just for her, but for everyone willing to see beyond appearances and assumptions. The classroom buzzed with quiet murmurs as Clara stood near the front, still holding the mop in one hand and the scrap of paper in the other. Harold, usually so confident and commanding, seemed uncharacteristically flustered. He held the paper, up to his face again, squinting at Clara's solution as if trying to find some flaw or mistake. But there was none. Every step of her reasoning was perfect, clear, concise, and undeniably correct. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Harold cleared his throat. "Well," he began, his voice quieter than usual, "this is impressive." The words came out slowly, almost reluctantly, as though admitting them pained him. "But where did you learn this? I mean, solving integrals like this isn't something just anyone can do." Clara hesitated for a moment, unsure how much she wanted to reveal. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, especially not in a room full of strangers. But something about the situation made her feel bold. Maybe it was the stunned looks on the students' faces, or maybe it was the way Harold's arrogance had crumbled under the weight of her knowledge. Whatever it was, Clara decided to speak up. "I studied math when I was younger," she said simply, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside her. "I didn't finish college, but I kept reading and practicing. Math has always been important to me." Her explanation was brief, but it carried a weight that silenced the room once again. Some of the students exchanged wide-eyed glances, while others leaned forward in their seats, eager to hear more. Even Harold seemed intrigued now, his earlier skepticism replaced by genuine curiosity. "Why don't you take a seat?" he suggested, gesturing toward an empty chair near the front. "We can talk more about this after class." Clara shook her head politely. "Thank you, but I should get back to work. I've got floors to clean." With that, she turned and walked out of the classroom, leaving behind a trail of stunned silence. As she disappeared into the hallway, the students erupted into hushed conversations, speculating about who Clara really was and how she had managed to solve such a difficult problem. Later that day, Emily Dawson, one of Harold's brightest students, couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. She replayed the scene in her mind over and over, the janitor walking into the classroom, the professor's jaw dropping, the elegant solution on the scrap of paper. It was unlike anything Emily had ever witnessed before. Intrigued, she decided to seek Clara out during her lunch break. Emily found Clara in a small utility closet tucked away in the corner of the building. The space was cramped and cluttered with cleaning supplies, but Clara had made it her own by adding a folding chair and a small stack of books. When Emily knocked lightly on the door frame, Clara looked up from the textbook she was reading. "Hi," Emily said, smiling awkwardly. "Do you mind if I come in?" Clara blinked in surprise but nodded. "Sure, what's up?" "I just wanted to say—" Emily paused, searching for the right words. "What you did today in class was amazing. Really inspiring." Clara chuckled softly, setting the book aside. "It wasn't a big deal. Just something I remembered from years ago." "No, it was a big deal," Emily insisted. "You proved Professor Grant wrong, and you did it without even trying. That takes guts." Clara shrugged modestly. "I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just wanted to show him he shouldn't judge people so quickly." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "Still, I think it's incredible." "How long have you been studying math?" Clara sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Since I was a kid. My parents couldn't afford tutors or fancy schools, but I loved solving problems. I won a few competitions in high school, and I even got a scholarship to study math in college. But then, life happened." "What do you mean?" Emily asked gently. Clara hesitated, clearly uncomfortable discussing her past, but something about Emily's friendly demeanor put her at ease. "My mom got sick and I had to drop out to take care of her. After that, I worked whatever jobs I could find to support us. Eventually, I ended up here." Emily listened intently, her heart swelling with admiration for the woman sitting across from her. "That must have been hard," she said softly. "Giving up something you love like that." "It was," Clara admitted. "But I never stopped loving math. Whenever I have free time, I read books or practice problems. It helps me remember who I used to be and who I still want to be." Emily smiled warmly. "Well, I think you're pretty amazing. And honestly, I think Professor Grant feels the same way, even if he won't admit it yet." Clara laughed quietly. "Maybe, either way it doesn't matter. I'm happy doing what I do." "But why settle for cleaning floors when you could be teaching calculus?" Emily pressed. "You're brilliant, Clara. You deserve a chance to use your talents." Clara looked down at her hands, which were calloused from years of manual labor. "It's not that simple," she said softly. "I'm not the same person I was back then. Life changes you." "That doesn't mean you can't change back," Emily countered. "Or at least try." For a long moment, Clara didn't respond. She stared at the floor, lost in thought. Emily's words had struck a chord deep within her, stirring feelings she'd buried long ago. Could she really go back to the world of academia? Was it possible to reclaim the dreams she'd sacrificed? Before Clara could answer, the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. Reluctantly, Emily stood up. "I should probably get going," she said, "but I hope you'll think about what I said." Clara nodded, offering a small smile. "Thanks for stopping by, Emily. It means a lot." As Emily left the utility closet, she couldn't shake the image of Clara sitting among the cleaning supplies, surrounded by textbooks and notes. There was something poetic about it, a reminder that brilliance could exist in the most unexpected places. Determined to help Clara in any way she could, Emily resolved to bring the matter to Harold's attention. When Emily returned to her next class, she noticed Harold pacing anxiously at the front of the room. He glanced up as she entered, his expression troubled. Sensing an opportunity, Emily approached him cautiously. "Professor Grant," she began, "can I talk to you for a minute?" Harold nodded, stepping aside so they could speak privately. "What's on your mind, Emily?" "It's about Clara," she said. "The janitor from earlier." Harold's cheeks flushed slightly at the mention of her name. "Yes, what about her?" "I spoke to her during lunch," Emily explained. "She told me she used to study math in college, before she had to drop out because of family issues. She's been teaching herself ever since." Harold frowned, rubbing the back of his neck. I see. And you're telling me this because I think we owe her more than an apology, Emily said firmly. She's incredibly talented, Professor. More talented than most of us in this room. Don't you think she deserves a second chance? Harold hesitated, his pride warring with his sense of fairness. On one hand, he hated the idea of admitting he'd misjudged someone so thoroughly. On the other hand, he couldn't deny the truth of Emily's words. Clara's solution to the integral problem had been nothing short of extraordinary. You may be right, he admitted finally. But what exactly are you suggesting? We could invite her to audit your classes, Emily proposed, or maybe even assist with research projects. She might not have a degree, but her skills speak for themselves. Harold considered the idea, his initial resistance softening. It's worth considering, he said slowly. But I'll need to speak with her first. See if she's interested. Emily smiled, feeling a surge of hope. I think she will be. Little did either of them know, their conversation marked the beginning of a journey that would change all their lives forever. For Clara, it was a chance to rediscover her passion and prove to herself that she was more than the sum of her circumstances. For Harold, it was an opportunity to confront his biases and become a better mentor. And for Emily, it was a reminder that sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness or one bold decision to set greatness in motion. The next morning, Harold found himself sitting alone in his office, staring at the stack of papers on his desk. His mind kept drifting back to the events of the previous day, the janitor solving a problem he'd considered too complex for most of his students, Emily's impassioned plea, and the nagging feeling that he'd underestimated someone who clearly deserved more respect. He tapped his pen against the edge of his desk, deep in thought. What should he do? Should he approach Clara and offer her a chance to join his classes? Or would she reject him outright, given how poorly he'd treated her? Finally, after much deliberation, Harold decided to act. He couldn't ignore the fact that Clara had displayed a level of mathematical skill that rivaled, and perhaps even surpassed, his own. More importantly, he realized he owed her an apology. The least he could do was acknowledge his mistake and see if there was any way to make amends. With that in mind, Harold left his office and began searching for Clara. It didn't take long to find her. She was in the hallway outside the lecture hall, mopping the floor with practiced ease. When she saw Harold approaching, she stopped what she was doing and straightened up, meeting his gaze with a mixture of caution and curiosity. Clara, Harold began, his tone unusually soft. Do you have a moment to talk? Clara tilted, her head slightly surprised by the politeness in his voice. Sure, she said, leaning the mop against the wall. What's on your mind? Harold hesitated, unsure where to start. Then he took a deep breath and plunged ahead. First, I want to apologize for what I said yesterday. My comment about janitors not understanding calculus was both disrespectful and inaccurate. I judged you unfairly, and for that I'm truly sorry. Clara blinked, taken aback by the sincerity in his words. She hadn't expected such a straightforward apology, especially from someone like Harold. For a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Finally, she nodded. Thank you, she said simply. That means a lot. Encouraged by her reaction, Harold continued. I also wanted to ask, well, this might sound strange, but I'd like to invite you to audit my calculus classes. Your skills are remarkable, Clara, and I think you'd benefit from being part of the discussions. Plus, I'd appreciate having someone around who can challenge me when I need it. Clara stared at him, stunned. This was the last thing she'd expected to hear. You're serious? She asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Completely, Harold replied. I realize this is unusual, but I believe you belong in a classroom, not just as a listener, but as a participant, if you're willing, of course. For a long moment, Clara didn't say anything. She looked down at her hands, thinking carefully about what Harold had just offered. Part of her wanted to jump at the opportunity, to step back into the world she'd loved so dearly. But another part of her felt hesitant. Could she really go back to studying math after all these years? Would she fit in with the students, many, of whom were decades younger than her? And most importantly, did she still have what it took to succeed? I don't know, she admitted finally. It's been a long time since I've been in a classroom. I'm not sure I'd be able to keep up. Harold shook his head firmly. Don't sell yourself short, Clara. You already proved yesterday that you're more than capable. Besides, auditing doesn't mean you have to take exams or earn grades. It's just a chance to learn and engage with the material again. Clara bit her lip, still uncertain. But then she remembered Emily's words from the day before. You're brilliant, Clara. You deserve a chance to use your talents. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was time to stop doubting herself and take a leap of faith. All right, she said slowly, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. I'll give it a try. Harold's face lit up with relief and excitement. Wonderful. I'll make sure everything is arranged. Just let me know which lectures you'd like to attend and we'll go from there. Over the next few weeks, Clara began attending Harold's calculus classes. At first, she kept a low profile, slipping into the back row and listening quietly, while the professor explained concepts and worked through problems. But as the days went by, she grew more comfortable. She started asking questions during discussions, offering insights that often surprised both Harold and the students. Her presence quickly became a source of inspiration for everyone in the room. Emily, in particular, was thrilled to see Clara thriving. She made a point of sitting near her during lectures, eager to learn from her unique perspective. After class, the two women would often chat about the material, sharing ideas and working through challenging problems together. Their friendship blossomed, and Emily became Clara's biggest cheerleader, encouraging her to push herself further. One afternoon, after a particularly engaging lecture, Harold pulled Clara aside. How are you finding the classes so far? He asked. They're great, Clara replied honestly. It feels good to be learning again. I forgot how much I missed it. Harold smiled, pleased with her response. I'm glad to hear that. And I have another idea if you're interested. What is it? Clara asked, intrigued. There's a research project I've been working on involving differential equations. Harold explained. It's quite advanced, but I think your input could be invaluable. Would you consider helping me with it? Clara's eyes widened in surprise. Are you sure? I'm not exactly qualified. You're more qualified than you realize. Harold interrupted gently. Everything you've shown me so far proves that you have a natural talent for this kind of work. Besides, it's not about qualifications. It's about passion and dedication, and I know you have plenty of both. Touched by his confidence in her, Clara nodded. Okay, I'll help. As Clara dove into the research project, she discovered a new side of herself, one that was curious, driven, and unafraid to tackle difficult challenges. Working alongside Harold, she explored complex theories and devised innovative solutions to problems that had stumped even experienced mathematicians. Her contributions were invaluable, and Harold frequently praised her for her creativity and insight. Meanwhile, word of Clara's involvement in the project spread throughout the university. Students whispered about the janitor-turned-mathematician, marveling at her journey from cleaning floors to collaborating with a respected professor. Some were inspired by her story, while others were skeptical, wondering if she truly belonged in such an elite academic setting. But Clara paid no attention to the gossip. She focused solely on the work, determined to prove that she was capable of achieving greatness. By the end of the semester, Clara's efforts paid off. Together, she and Harold completed their research paper, which was accepted for publication in a prestigious mathematics journal. The achievement was monumental, not just for Clara but for Harold as well, who had learned to value humility and collaboration over arrogance and ego. When the news broke, the entire university celebrated. Clara's colleagues threw her a small party in the faculty lounge, complete with cake and heartfelt speeches. Even those who had doubted her came forward to congratulate her, humbled by her success. For the first time in years, Clara felt proud of herself, not because of the recognition, but because she had stayed true to her love for math despite the odds. As she stood in the crowded room surrounded by friends and admirers, Clara reflected on how far she'd come. From the lonely halls of the university to the forefront of groundbreaking research, her journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. And though she knew there would always be challenges ahead, she faced them with renewed confidence and determination. Little did she know, however, that this was only the beginning. The months following Clara's rise from janitor to research collaborator were nothing short of transformative, for her, for Harold, and for the entire university. The publication of their joint paper in a prestigious mathematics journal sent ripples through the academic community. What started as a local story about an unlikely math genius quickly gained national attention. News outlets picked up the tale, framing it as a heartwarming example of perseverance and hidden talent. Reporters flocked to the university, eager to interview Clara and learn more about her journey. At first, Clara was overwhelmed by the sudden spotlight. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, let alone speaking to cameras and journalists. But with Harold's encouragement and Emily's unwavering support, she found her footing. Sitting in front of microphones or standing on stage, at small press conferences, Clara spoke candidly about her past struggles and her love for mathematics. Her humility and sincerity resonated with people, turning her into an unexpected role model for anyone who had ever felt underestimated or overlooked. Harold, too, underwent a transformation. The experience of working with Clara had humbled him in ways he never anticipated. Gone was the arrogant professor who dismissed others based on appearances. In his place stood a mentor who championed underdogs and encouraged his students to look beyond surface-level judgments. During lectures, he often shared Clara's story, using it as a reminder that brilliance could be found in the most unexpected places. His classes became more inclusive, with students feeling emboldened to participate and ask questions without fear of ridicule. Despite the newfound fame, Clara remained grounded. She continued balancing her duties as a janitor with her growing responsibilities in the math department. Though she no longer needed to clean floors to make ends meet, thanks to a modest stipend provided by the university, she refused to give up the job entirely. "It keeps me connected," she told Emily one evening over coffee. "To my roots, I mean. I don't want to forget where I came from." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "I get that. Still, it's kind of crazy how much has changed in such a short time. You're practically a celebrity now." Clara laughed softly, shaking her head. "I'm not a celebrity. I'm just someone who got lucky enough to find her way back to something she loves." But luck, as Clara herself would admit, only played a small part in her success. Hard work, resilience, and an unshakable belief in her abilities had carried her through the darkest moments of her life. Now, those same qualities propelled her forward as she navigated this new chapter. One day, while reviewing notes for an upcoming lecture, Harold approached Clara with another proposition. "Have you ever considered teaching?" he asked casually, though his eyes sparkled with excitement. Clara looked up, startled. "Teaching? Me?" "Why not?" Harold replied. "You've already proven you can explain complex ideas clearly and concisely, and the students adore you. They've been asking if you'll lead a workshop or seminar." Clara hesitated, unsure whether she was ready for such a responsibility. Teaching required confidence, authority, and the ability to command a room, qualities she wasn't sure she possessed. "I don't know, Harold. That sounds intimidating." "It does," Harold agreed. "But think about it. You've inspired so many people already, including me. Imagine what you could do with your own classroom." The idea lingered in Clara's mind long after their conversation ended. Could she really stand in front of a group of students and teach them? The thought both terrified and thrilled her. After talking it over with Emily, who enthusiastically urged her to take the leap, Clara decided to give it a try. Her first workshop focused on practical applications of calculus, a topic she knew well and enjoyed discussing. To her relief, the session went better than she'd hoped. The students listened intently, asked thoughtful questions, and left the room buzzing with excitement. One young woman even approached Clara afterward to thank her, saying, "You made me see math in a whole new way, thank you." That moment solidified Clara's decision to pursue teaching further. With Harold's guidance, she began leading more workshops and eventually co-teaching a few introductory courses. Each class brought new challenges, but also new rewards. Watching her students grow and succeed filled Clara with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. As the academic year drew to a close, the university organized a special ceremony to honor Clara's contributions. Faculty members, students, and even local dignitaries gathered in the auditorium to celebrate her achievements. When it was Clara's turn to speak, she stepped onto the stage, clutching a folded piece of paper in her hands. The audience erupted into applause. But Clara waited patiently for the noise to die down before beginning her speech. "Thank you all for being here today," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in her chest. "When I started working at this university, I never imagined I'd end up standing where I am now. Back then, I was just trying to get by, to pay the bills and keep moving forward. Math was my escape, a way to hold on to a part of myself that I thought I'd lost forever." She paused, glancing out at the sea of faces watching her. "But life has a funny way of surprising us. Through a series of events I still can't quite believe, I found myself surrounded by people who believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. People like Professor Grant, who gave me a second chance, and Emily, who reminded me that it's never too late to chase your dreams." Clara unfolded the piece of paper in her hands and held it up for everyone to see. It was the scrap of paper she'd used to solve Harold's integral problem, the same one that had sparked this incredible journey. "This little piece of paper changed everything," she said with a smile. "Not because of the equation written on it, but because it reminded me of something important. Intelligence doesn't care about titles or jobs or circumstances. It exists wherever curiosity and determination live." The crowd erupted into applause once more, this time louder and more heartfelt. Clara smiled, blinking back tears as she stepped away from the podium. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not as a janitor, not as a mathematician, but as a person whose worth extended far beyond labels. In the weeks that followed, Clara continued teaching and mentoring students, her reputation growing steadily. She also began volunteering at local schools, sharing her story with young people and encouraging them to pursue their passions regardless of obstacles. Her message resonated deeply, especially among girls and minorities who rarely saw themselves represented in STEM fields. Meanwhile, Harold took steps to ensure that stories like Clara's wouldn't remain hidden in the future. He advocated for programs designed to identify and nurture untapped talent within the university community, regardless of background or profession. Inspired by Clara's journey, several faculty members joined him in creating scholarships and mentorship opportunities for non-traditional students. Though the road ahead wasn't always easy, Clara faced it with courage and grace. She knew there would still be challenges, moments of self-doubt, skeptics who questioned her qualifications, and the occasional reminder of how far she'd come. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that she had reclaimed her passion, inspired countless others, and proven that brilliance could shine in even the most unexpected places. And as she walked across campus one crisp autumn morning, surrounded by the laughter of students and the rustle of falling leaves, Clara allowed herself a quiet moment of gratitude. Life had thrown her curveballs, but she had caught them and turned them into something beautiful. As the years passed, Clara's influence continued to grow, not just within the university but far beyond its walls. Her story became a beacon of hope for people from all walks of life. Those who felt stuck in dead-end jobs, those who doubted their abilities, and those who had been told they didn't belong in certain spaces. Clara's journey was proof that it was never too late to rewrite your narrative, no matter how many obstacles stood in the way. At the university, Clara settled into her dual role as both a teacher and a mentor. She taught introductory calculus, courses her warm and patient approach making even the most intimidated students feel at ease. Unlike some professors who focused solely on formulas and equations, Clara emphasized the beauty of mathematics, the way it connected ideas, solved real-world problems, and sparked creativity. Her lectures were lively and engaging, often filled with anecdotes from her own life. Students loved her stories about sneaking into libraries during her janitorial shifts or scribbling solutions on scraps of paper while waiting for the bus. These tales made her relatable, showing them that success wasn't reserved for the privileged few, but could be achieved through persistence and passion. Outside the classroom, Clara spent countless hours mentoring students one-on-one. Many of them came to her unsure of themselves, struggling with difficult concepts or doubting whether they belonged in STEM fields. Clara listened patiently, offering guidance and encouragement without judgment. She reminded them that failure was part of the process, something she knew all too well from her own experiences. "You don't have to be perfect," she would say. "You just have to keep trying." Her impact extended beyond her immediate students. Inspired by Clara's example, several faculty members began rethinking how they approached teaching and mentorship. They started hosting workshops aimed at fostering inclusivity and breaking down barriers for underrepresented groups in academia. Even Harold, who had once prided himself on his strict standards, adopted a more compassionate teaching style, prioritizing understanding over perfection. The entire math department seemed to shift, becoming a place where everyone felt welcome and valued. Despite her growing responsibilities, Clara never lost sight of what mattered most to her: helping others discover their potential. One of her proudest accomplishments came when she launched a program called Math Without Limits, designed to introduce high school students from underserved communities to advanced mathematical concepts. Every Saturday morning, she and a team of volunteers traveled to local schools, bringing puzzles, games, and interactive lessons that made math accessible and fun. For many of these students, it was their first exposure to higher-level thinking, and for some, it planted the seed of a dream they hadn't known was possible. One particular student, a shy teenager named Marcus, stood out to Clara. He struggled in school due to financial hardships at home, but showed an uncanny knack for solving complex problems. During one session, he astounded everyone by devising a creative solution to a geometry challenge that left even Clara momentarily stumped. Recognizing his talent, she took him under her wing, tutoring him after school and encouraging him to apply for college scholarships. By the end of the year, Marcus had earned a full ride to a prestigious engineering program, a feat neither he nor his family had ever imagined possible. Stories like Marcus's fueled Clara's determination to keep pushing boundaries. She partnered with local businesses and nonprofits to secure funding for additional programs, ensuring that opportunities reached as many young minds as possible. Her efforts earned her widespread recognition, including awards from educational organizations and invitations to speak at conferences across the country. Yet despite the accolades, Clara remained humble, always deflecting praise onto the students and colleagues who supported her along the way. Back at the university, Clara faced new challenges as she transitioned into a leadership role within the math department. When the previous chair retired, Harold nominated Clara to take his place, an idea that initially shocked her. "Me? Chair of the department?" she asked incredulously. "I'm still figuring things out myself." "You're exactly who we need," Harold insisted. "Your vision, your compassion, your ability to bring people together, it's what this department has been missing." Though hesitant at first, Clara eventually accepted the position, viewing it as another opportunity to make a difference. As chair, she implemented policies aimed at increasing diversity and accessibility within the department. She advocated for flexible schedules to accommodate non-traditional students, expanded tutoring services, and created partnerships with community colleges to provide pathways for transfer students. Under her leadership, the department flourished, attracting record numbers of applicants and producing groundbreaking research. But Clara's greatest challenge came not from her professional duties but from within herself. Despite her outward confidence, she occasionally wrestled with imposter syndrome, questioning whether she truly deserved the success she'd achieved. Late at night, as she sat grading papers or preparing lesson plans, doubts would creep in. Had she only gotten this far because of luck? Was she smart enough to lead an entire department? It was during one of these moments of self-doubt that Emily paid her a visit. Now a graduate student pursuing her PhD in applied mathematics, Emily had stayed close to Clara over the years, often stopping by her office to chat or seek advice. On this particular evening, she found Clara slumped over her desk, staring blankly at a stack of exams. "You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders," Emily said gently, pulling up a chair beside her. Clara sighed, rubbing her temples. I guess I'm just overwhelmed. Sometimes I wonder if I'm cut out for all this. Emily smiled knowingly. You mean being a teacher, a mentor, a department chair, and basically everyone's favorite human being? Clara chuckled softly. Something like that. Well, let me remind you of something, Emily said, leaning forward. You didn't get here by accident. You worked hard for every single thing you've achieved, and honestly, nobody deserves it more than you do. Her words struck a chord deep within Clara. Over the years, she had helped so many others believe in themselves. But now, sitting here with Emily, she realized she needed to practice what she preached. Slowly, she nodded. Thanks, Em. I needed to hear that. No problem, Emily replied with a grin. Now, how about we grab some coffee and talk about something less serious, like why you haven't updated your wardrobe since 1995? Clara laughed, feeling a weight lift off her chest. Sometimes all it took was a little perspective and a good friend to put things back into focus. As time went on, Clara's legacy continued to grow. Alumni returned to campus to thank her for changing their lives, sharing stories of careers launched and dreams realized thanks to her guidance. Local newspapers wrote glowing profiles about her work, calling her a mathematical hero and a force for good. Yet through it all, Clara remained steadfastly grounded, focusing not on her achievements but on the impact she hoped to leave behind. One crisp spring morning, as she walked across campus to teach her first class of the day, Clara paused to take in the scene around her. The sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the brick pathways. Students hurried past, backpacks slung over their shoulders, chatting animatedly about assignments and exams. In the distance, she could hear laughter echoing from the quad, mingling with the faint strains of music from a street performer's guitar. For a moment, Clara allowed herself to reflect on how far she'd come, from mopping floors in empty hallways to leading a thriving academic department. Her journey had been anything but ordinary. But what mattered most wasn't the titles or accolades. It was the connections she'd forged, the lives she'd touched, and the knowledge that she'd stayed true to herself every step of the way. With a contented smile, Clara resumed her walk, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Life might have thrown her curveballs, but she had learned to catch them and turn them into something extraordinary. Years passed, and Clara's influence continued to ripple outward, touching lives in ways she could never have imagined. The university had transformed under her leadership, becoming a model for inclusivity and innovation in education. Students from all backgrounds thrived in an environment where they felt valued and supported, and the math department flourished as new ideas and perspectives flowed freely. But for Clara, the true measure of success wasn't found in awards or statistics. It was in the stories of the people she had helped along the way. One such story came from a young woman named Danielle, who had once been a shy freshman struggling to find her place at the university. When Clara first met Danielle, she was sitting alone in the library, staring blankly at her calculus textbook. Danielle confessed that she didn't think she belonged in the program, convinced she wasn't smart enough to keep up with her peers. Clara sat down beside her and spent hours walking her through the material, patiently explaining concepts until the light bulb moments began to click. Over time, Danielle grew more confident, eventually graduating at the top of her class and going on to earn a PhD in mathematical biology. Years later, when Danielle returned to the university as a guest lecturer, she made sure to thank Clara publicly during her presentation. "I wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for you," Danielle said, her voice thick with emotion. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That changed everything." Moments like these reminded Clara why she had chosen this path. Teaching wasn't just about imparting knowledge. It was about empowering others to see their own potential. And while she took pride in the achievements of her students, she also cherished the quieter victories. The student who finally understood a tricky concept after weeks of struggle, or the hesitant voice that spoke up in class for the first time. These small triumphs added up, creating a tapestry of growth and resilience that spanned generations. Despite her many accomplishments, Clara never lost sight of her roots. Even as chair of the math department, she continued volunteering with Math Without Limits, traveling to schools and community centers to inspire young minds. Her passion for outreach only deepened over time, fueled by the belief that everyone deserved access to opportunities regardless of their circumstances. She often joked that she was still a janitor at heart, cleaning up messes, only now they were metaphorical ones. Her dedication did not go unnoticed. One day, while preparing for a workshop at a local high school, Clara received an email from a national organization dedicated to advancing STEM education. They wanted to honor her with a Lifetime Achievement Award for her contributions to mathematics and mentorship. At first, Clara dismissed the idea, insisting there were others more deserving of recognition. But Emily, now a professor herself, encouraged her to accept. "This isn't just about you," Emily said. "It's about what your work represents. You're showing the world that brilliance can come from anywhere, and that's something worth celebrating." Reluctantly, Clara agreed to attend the ceremony, which was held in a grand ballroom filled with luminaries from across the country. As she stepped onto the stage to receive her award, she was greeted by thunderous applause. Looking out at the sea of faces, she felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, not for the accolade itself, but for the journey that had brought her here. Her acceptance speech, Clara kept her remarks simple and heartfelt. "I didn't set out to change the world," she said. "I just wanted to share my love of math with anyone willing to listen. If my story inspires even one person to pursue their dreams, then I've done my job." The audience erupted into cheers, moved by her humility and sincerity. Reporters clamored to interview her afterward, but Clara politely declined most requests, preferring to let her actions speak louder than words. For her, the real reward lay in knowing she had made a difference. As retirement approached, Clara began thinking about how to leave a lasting legacy. Though she planned to step down as department chair, she had no intention of slowing down entirely. Instead, she focused on building systems that would ensure the programs she had created would endure long after she was gone. She worked closely, with younger faculty members passing on her wisdom and encouraging them to carry the torch. Together, they developed initiatives aimed at fostering collaboration between departments, expanding access to resources, and promoting diversity in STEM fields. One of her final projects was establishing a scholarship fund for non-traditional students, those returning to school later in life, juggling jobs and families, or overcoming significant obstacles. Named the Clara Dawson Scholarship, it provided financial assistance as well as mentorship and support services tailored to each recipient's unique needs. The inaugural recipients included a single mother pursuing engineering, a veteran, transitioning to civilian life, and a former factory worker chasing a childhood dream of studying physics. At the scholarship banquet, Clara delivered a speech that brought tears to the eyes of many attendees. "Life is full of detours," she said. "Sometimes we take paths we never expected, face challenges we never asked for, but every experience shapes us, teaches us, prepares us for what comes next. Don't let fear or doubt hold you back. Trust yourself, lean on others, and remember, you are capable of far more than you realize." Her words resonated deeply, echoing throughout the room and beyond. For those fortunate enough to cross her path, Clara was more than a teacher or mentor. She was a guide, a cheerleader, and a source of unwavering belief in the power of possibility. In her final semester at the university, Clara decided to teach one last course, a special seminar titled The Beauty of Math. It was open to students of all majors, designed to showcase how mathematics intersected with art, music, nature, and everyday life. The class quickly filled to capacity, drawing not only eager learners but also alumni and community members eager to hear Clara's insights one last time. On the last day of the semester, the classroom buzzed with excitement as Clara handed out certificates of completion. Each student shared a reflection on what they had learned, their voices filled with appreciation and admiration. When it was Clara's turn to speak, she smiled warmly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I want to thank all of you for being part of this journey," she said. Teaching has been the greatest privilege of my life and I'll miss it terribly. But I know I'm leaving you in good hands, your own. Keep asking questions, keep seeking answers, and above all, keep believing in yourselves. Because the world needs bright minds like yours. As the students filed out of the room, many lingered to hug her or express their gratitude. Clara savored each moment, knowing she had poured her heart into this work and left it better than she had found it. After retiring, Clara moved to a small cottage near the edge of town, surrounded by trees and quiet countryside. She spent her days reading, gardening, and occasionally tutoring local children who needed extra help with their studies. Though she no longer taught formal classes, her impact lived on through the countless lives she had touched. Former students sent her letters and photos updating her on their careers and families. Some even visited her, bringing grandchildren to meet the woman who had inspired their parents. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Clara sat on her porch sipping tea, she reflected on her journey. From the lonely days of scrubbing floors to the fulfillment of shaping young minds, she had traveled a road marked by hardship, perseverance, and joy. Along the way, she had discovered that intelligence wasn't confined to classrooms or titles. It was a spark within everyone, waiting to be fanned into flame. Clara smiled softly, watching the golden sunlight filter through the trees. She didn't need trophies or headlines to know she had lived a meaningful life. Her legacy wasn't measured in awards or accolades, but in the hearts and minds of those she had inspired. And as she looked toward the horizon, she knew her story wasn't truly ending. It was simply continuing, carried forward by the generations she had helped shape. For Clara Dawson, the math genius who had once been mocked by a professor, the future was bright, and it was a future she had helped create one equation at a time.